Joining us to talk more about the cost of this war is Brigadier General Saleh Baba, who is retired, and also the president and founder, White Ink Institute for Strategy, Education and Research. He joins us from Abuja. Thank you and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Just a little correction that the name is Brigadier General Saleh Bala, retired, not Baba. Thank you.
Thank you. Tell us, what is the cost of the war to a country like Russia?
The cost of the war is horrendous, and it is not something that one can calculate to bits of dollars and cents or rubles or naira and kobo, especially when it is ongoing. It can just be some kind of estimation. But in this conversation, I will establish a fact that war itself is a tragedy. War is chaos. War is insane. It is something at every level of humanity that requires to be eliminated. But then, war is inevitable. When discussing the losses of this war, it will be foolhardy to only focus on what losses on this war is to Russia. Because fundamentally, I am in a disposition to view this war from its human losses. And if we are to look at war and the efforts to prevent it, even as early as the establishment of the League of Nations in 1920, after the World War, the very aim of this global organization is to mitigate suffering on human beings and to eliminate to the most extent and reduce suffering in war. And very much too, that is what has established, what has caused the establishment of the Red Cross in 1863. So when we are looking at this war from a human disposition, it is important that we view that the sense of victory in war is relative. If on Ukraine today we are talking about 10 million refugees, 10 million and about 4 million internally displaced people, I think it is much more than talking about the hundreds of tanks, aircrafts, or the rubble that Russia is losing, as much as this is very, very important. But if we want to count on costs, we should also look at the implications of this war from a global perspective, because the world today is very much about the human. So we must and we should be viewing this war from what suffering it is causing primarily to the people of Ukraine and how its spread will be to the global community.
Yes, but even with that, you talk about the role of peace institutes and organizations, but sadly, the war continues, the invasion still continues. And we've also heard, from different sides, if it's Ukraine or Russia, they're previously claiming that, these forces have been lost and these are the people as well. I mean, do we know what the true figures are, which are also important in this war? And this is for the aftermath, if anyone is going to be taken to, the courts, for instance, in terms of keeping tabs with what it is we're witnessing with this invasion.
Yeah, it is really very, very interesting that we've gone through the wars, the invasion of Iraq in Kuwait, and what is called Operation Desert Storm to remove Iraqi forces from Kuwait. And for the first time, we have seen a live transmission of war to the world, and people are open to make their own decisions. But here we are in a war where there is a mass conspiracy of the West, and indeed Russia, where there is so much of mitigation of access to true information about really what is going. There is so much demonization of Russia, and then within Russia itself, there is so much control of information on the war that is going on. So it is very, very difficult from a standpoint of a strategist that is outside the region of the war to really make informed and cogent conclusions and statements over the state of the war. And it is a cry that the global press, for the huge responsibility and trust that is invested in the global press, it seems to have bought into the Western and NATO strategic communication or propaganda by itself, so to speak, about the reality of this war. You hardly, even while I was doing research on this war, and you try to find out about Ukrainian military casualty on this war, except for the statistics that you have rolled out, it is very, very difficult from open source to really have a credible information about how many troops and what assets the Ukrainian military is losing. Because once you go to search that, it only tells you about the civilian casualty, which very much is a reality, is a sad reality to which every human being should be concerned about. But then, on also the Russian side, what is really happening across the Russian border? Are there displaced persons? Are there attacks into Russia? Are those happening? You hardly can find any information on that. But we have to square up, and as human beings, to be very, very concerned about the effects of this crisis to the human community, which is very clear, present, and dangerous.
Indeed, Brigadier General, and we have been looking at that, and we'll be looking at that further on in the program. But looking at how far back this war is costing Russia militarily as well as economically and financially. As we suggested, troops lost over 100 tanks, aircraft, helicopters, and research shows that on the 4th day of this invasion, direct losses from military action cost the Russian Federation $7 billion, including $4.2 billion cost of lost machinery. When you're looking at the total cost so far, how much exactly do you think that Russia is investing in this war in Ukraine?
When Russia goes to war with Ukraine, it very much knows that it is very much a proxy war to which it is drawing its traditional adversary, which is the West. That is the NATO coalition. So if you are speaking about a war involving Russia and Ukraine, it is very much more appropriate to speak to it about the NATO-Russian war. For as much as you do not have NATO boots on the ground, but you very much have support deployments, including cyber forces, to which the president of the United States is accusing Russia of likely deploying. Because right now we have deployment of Patriot missiles in Latvia, in Poland, and Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and Poland. And these are helping a lot. And this is what has brought Russia to the use of supersonic missiles in this warfare, which otherwise would have remained at the level of conventionality. And this is a very, very dangerous approach, because one will think that the major approach to dealing with this war is establishing negotiation. But you can see that in all the rhetorics of the NATO leaders, it is in order to goad Russia into escalation. And the battleground, indeed, for this war, the ground on which these elephants will contest is Ukraine. So sadly, sadly, the loss will be Ukraine and the larger world. We all know how many Nigerians, in fact, 3,500 Nigerians had to be evacuated out of that. So if you are even speaking about the global implications, I continually try to draw us to the global implications of this warfare,
Brigadier General,
we're already suffering an energy crisis. There's going to be a food crisis because Ukraine and Russia alone are responsible.
It's a lot of impact, and it's almost as if, you know, with all that is happening and the propaganda, we cannot actually count all of the costs, you know, in this war. So many factors to look at.
Absolutely.
But we'd like to appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Brigadier General Saleh Bala, also President, founder, Whiting Institute for Strategy, Education Research. Thank you so much for joining us on the program
today. Thank you very much, and I hope it goes well for humanity. Thank you.
Indeed.
Some of the issues he raised are issues that we have already been talking about on the program, and we continue to raise them. Well, coming up after the break, identifying deep fakes in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. A panel of discussants will be joining our digital correspondent, Victor Matthias, in our digital studio.